The wrong contract. Ethan sat alone in his small apartment, staring at the empty walls. The rent was late again. His job at the delivery company barely paid enough for food. Life felt heavy, like a chain around his neck. He wanted more: money, power, respect. Anything that could change his boring life. That night, while scrolling on his old laptop, Ethan saw a strange advertisement pop up. The screen went black for a second, and then bold golden letters appeared. "Sign this contract for unlimited success." Ethan blinked. At first he thought it was just another scam, but the letters glowed as if alive, pulling him closer. His heartbeat quickened. Under the words was a link. "Click here to claim your future." He hesitated, but curiosity won. He clicked. The screen showed a simple contract. It looked ordinary, just like any job form he had seen before. It promised wealth, fame, and power. All it needed was a signature. Ethan's eyes moved quickly across the lines. The words were written in small, plain text, nothing strange, nothing scary. At the bottom, however, there was a row of symbols glowing faint blue, written in a language he could not understand. For a moment, Ethan thought about stopping. But then he remembered his landlord's threats, the unpaid bills, and his boss yelling at him that morning. This was his chance. His hand trembled as he clicked the sign button and typed his name. The screen flashed bright white. Ethan covered his eyes. His heart pounded. The air in the room grew heavy, like the oxygen had vanished. Then, boom! The lights in his apartment flickered. The ground shook as if an earthquake had struck. A high-pitched ringing filled his ears. His laptop fell off the desk with a crash. Suddenly, a circle of light appeared in the center of the room. It spun faster and faster, glowing like fire and ice at the same time. Ethan stumbled back, his mouth open in shock. He wanted to scream, but no sound came out. From the circle, a massive shape emerged. First, 2 long metallic boots stepped out, then armor covered in glowing red lines, then a tall figure almost 7 feet high carrying a weapon shaped like a blade and a gun mixed together. The circle closed behind him with a final snap. The figure turned his head. His face was covered by a dark helmet with 2 burning eyes that glowed gold. He looked directly at Ethan. Then, to Ethan's horror, the giant figure knelt down. The floor shook under the weight. His deep, echoing voice filled the room. "I am Karak. By your signature, I am bound to serve you." Ethan froze. His mouth went dry. He tried to speak, but only a whisper escaped. "What are you?" The figure slowly stood tall again. "I am your servant. Until your time ends, I belong to you." Ethan's brain spun. This was impossible. This was insane. He had expected maybe some scam call, maybe a silly email. But this was real. He could feel the heat radiating from the alien's armor. He could hear the low hum of strange technology vibrating in the air. Karak stepped closer. His glowing eyes never blinked. Ethan could smell something sharp, like burned metal mixed with ozone. "You are my master now," Karak said. "Command me." Ethan's legs shook. He pressed his back against the wall. This couldn't be happening. He wanted money, sure. He wanted power, yes. But not like this. Not with a monster from another world standing in his living room. He tried to laugh nervously. Okay. This is a prank, right? Some kind of costume?" Karak tilted his head, confused. Then, without warning, he raised his arm. A ball of blue energy formed in his palm, crackling with lightning. The air around it burned. Ethan gasped, falling to his knees. "This is no costume," Karak said calmly. "This is truth." The ball of energy vanished as quickly as it appeared. Karak stood still, silent, waiting. Ethan's thoughts raced. He had signed a contract without reading it. He had asked for success, for power, and now an alien warrior was calling him master. But why him? Why now? And what did "until your time ends" really mean? The room was silent except for Ethan's ragged breathing. The contract still glowed faintly on the laptop screen, the strange symbols burning brighter now as if mocking him. Ethan swallowed hard. For the first time in his life, he had power at his fingertips. But deep inside, a cold fear grew in his chest, because he realized one thing. This was not a gift. This was a trap. The alien servant Ethan's heart was still racing from the night before. He had not slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same image. A massive, armored alien kneeling in front of him. Morning sunlight tried to push through the dirty curtains of his apartment, but the light could not wash away the shadows of fear inside the room. Karak was still there. He stood silently in the corner, tall as a statue, his glowing eyes fixed on nothing and everything at once. Ethan rubbed his face and muttered, "This has to be a dream." But the smell of burned metal was still in the air. The faint hum of Karak's armor filled the silence. "No, this was not a dream. Why are you still here?" Ethan asked, his voice shaking. Karak turned his head slowly, every movement mechanical yet graceful. "Because you are my master. I cannot leave." Ethan's stomach twisted. The word master sounded wrong, heavy, dangerous. "I didn't ask for this," Ethan said quickly. "I don't need a servant. Especially not whatever you are." Karak took one step forward. The floor creaked under his weight. His voice echoed like thunder trapped in a cave. "You signed the pact. The bond cannot be undone. I serve you and you alone. Ask and it shall be done." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but then he remembered the contract. The glowing words, the strange language. He had signed without reading. He had trapped himself. His mind raced. If he really is bound to me, maybe I can use him, just carefully. Ethan stood up, forcing a smile to hide his fear. "Okay, fine. If you're really here to serve me, prove it." Karak's eyes glowed brighter. "What is your command?" Ethan looked around his messy apartment. "A small test, something simple. Clean this place up." Karak raised his hand. Energy crackled around his palm. A low hum filled the air. In seconds, every piece of trash, every dirty plate, every pile of clothes lifted into the air and vanished into glowing dust. The apartment shined as if brand new. Ethan's jaw dropped. "That's impossible." Karak tilted his head. "Nothing is impossible." Ethan laughed nervously. He was both amazed and terrified. If Karak could do this with a snap, what else was he capable of? The first display of power later that day, Ethan decided to test him outside. He walked through the busy city streets, Karak following silently, towering over the crowd. People stopped and stared. Some screamed. Cars slowed down. Maybe you should stay hidden," Ethan whispered. Karak's voice was calm. "I do not hide." A group of men from Ethan's past suddenly appeared. Old bullies from school. They laughed when they saw him. "Ethan?
Still broke, still pathetic, huh?"
One of them sneered. Ethan's chest burned with old anger. Normally he would walk away, but this time Karak was behind him. Karak stepped forward, his armor glowing. The bullies froze, their smiles dying instantly. Karak's deep voice rumbled through the street. "Do you dare insult my master?" The ground trembled slightly. The men turned pale. Without another word, they ran. Ethan stood frozen. A part of him wanted to cheer. Another part whispered, "This is too much power." A dangerous gift. Over the next few days, Ethan learned more. Karak could lift cars with one hand. He could bend steel like paper. He could make doors unlock, computers obey, and enemies vanish in blinding flashes of light. With Karak by his side, Ethan felt untouchable. He started winning arguments at work. His boss stopped yelling. His landlord stopped asking for rent. Everyone treated him with respect or fear. But something strange kept happening. Every time Karak used his power, Ethan felt a sharp pain in his chest. Just for a second, like his energy was being drained. When he asked about it, Karak's reply was cold. "The bond shares power. When I act, you pay the price." Ethan tried to ignore it. The pain was small compared to the thrill of control. But deep down, fear grew. What if the pain grew worse? What if he lost more than just energy? The servant who watches at night. Ethan tried to sleep, but he could feel Karak's presence. The alien never rested. He stood in the corner, eyes glowing faint gold in the dark. Always watching. Always waiting, Ethan whispered one night. "Do you ever sleep?" Karak's reply was simple. "I cannot. As long as you live, I guard." It should have been comforting, but it wasn't. Ethan felt like a prisoner in his own apartment. A warning one evening, Ethan asked the question that had been burning in his mind. "Why me? Out of everyone in the world, why did I get you?" Karak was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "You were foolish. You signed without reading, and the universe punishes the foolish." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Punishes? What do you mean?" Karak's golden eyes locked onto him. "Every contract has a price. Every servant has a cost. When the time comes, you will understand." Ethan's stomach dropped. He didn't like the way Karak said "when the time comes." Ethan tried to laugh it off, but fear ate at his heart. He had power. He had respect. But he also had a shadow. a servant who was not fully his. And as the days passed, Ethan realized something terrifying. Karak was not just a servant. Karak was a hunter, and Ethan was not sure if in the end he would be the master or the prey. Strange Powers days passed, and Ethan grew used to the sound of Karak's armor humming softly in the shadows of his apartment. At first, he thought of him as nothing more than a bodyguard. But soon Ethan discovered something deeper. Karak was not just muscle. He carried power that bent the very laws of reality. Ethan learned this by accident. One night the city suffered a blackout. The whole neighborhood went dark. No lights, no internet, no sound but the restless barking of dogs. Ethan cursed, slamming his phone against the table. Great, another night wasted. Karak stepped forward. Without a word, he touched the wall with one armored hand. The lights in the apartment flickered back on, yet no one else in the city had power. Outside the window, the streets remained dark. Only Ethan's apartment glowed like a beacon. Ethan stared. How did you do that? Karak's golden eyes gleamed. Technology is nothing. Energy bends to my will. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. If Karak could power his home, what else could he control? A taste of power. The next morning, Ethan walked into work with Karak trailing silently behind. People stopped to stare. His boss, usually a red-faced man ready to shout, looked pale and nervous. Ethan, the boss stammered. You're late, but don't worry. It's fine. Totally fine. For the first time in years, Ethan smirked. He wasn't afraid anymore. Later, a coworker tried to mock him under his breath. Karak's head turned, eyes burning like fire. The man's voice broke, his words choking in his throat. He ran out of the room. Ethan felt power surging in his chest, not because of Karak's action, but because of the fear in everyone's eyes. He was no longer invisible. He mattered. The first command that night, Ethan tested the bond again. Karak, he said, trying to sound bold. If you're really mine, then bring me something. Impossible. Karak tilted his head. Define impossible. Ethan thought for a moment. Money, enough to change my life. Karak's chest glowed faint blue. He stretched his hand into the air, and space itself seemed to ripple. A moment later, heavy black cases appeared on the floor. Ethan opened them and gasped. They were filled with stacks of crisp bills, more money than he had ever seen in his life. Ethan laughed. He touched the money with trembling hands. This is real? Real, Karak said. But then Ethan felt it, the sharp stab in his chest. Pain. Quick, but deep, like a knife pressing against his heart. He stumbled, clutching himself. What was that? He gasped. Karak's voice was calm, almost cold. The bond feeds both ways. For every gift I give, you pay in blood and breath. Remember this. Ethan's hands shook, but his eyes returned to the piles of money. The pain had faded. The reward remained. It's worth it, he told himself. It has to be worth it. More than human, Ethan soon realized Karak's powers were not limited to material things. One evening, walking through the city, Ethan noticed a car swerving out of control. It raced toward a family crossing the street. Ethan froze, unable to act, but Karak moved. In less than a second, he appeared in front of the car. He lifted one armored arm and the vehicle stopped midair, frozen like a toy. The driver's eyes bulged in terror. Karak set the car gently back on the road, unharmed. The family escaped, running without even thanking him. Ethan stared at Karak in awe. He whispered, You're a god. Karak's reply was quiet but firm. I am no god. I am a weapon, and you are the one holding me. Ethan didn't know whether to feel powerful or terrified. The whisper of the contract, the nights grew stranger. Ethan often woke to see symbols glowing faintly on his laptop screen, the same alien letters from the contract. Sometimes they seemed to change shape, rearranging themselves into warnings he couldn't understand. Karak never looked at them, but Ethan noticed how his servant grew still whenever the letters appeared, as if he too could hear whispers in the dark. One night Ethan asked, What happens if I break the contract? Karak turned slowly. His voice was lower than usual. You cannot break what is carved into your soul. The answer made Ethan shiver. Addiction to power. The more Ethan commanded, the more reckless he became. He asked Karak to fix his debts, to silence those who mocked him, to bend reality in small ways that made life easier. Each time the pain in his chest returned, shorter, sharper, Stronger. At first, Ethan ignored it. But soon the pain lingered longer. His hands trembled when Karak used power. His breathing grew heavier at night. Am I dying? Ethan finally asked. Karak's glowing eyes met his. Silence stretched. Then Karak said one word. Yes. The truth hit like ice water. Ethan staggered back, shaking his head. No, that can't be. I wanted success, not death. Karak stepped closer, towering over him. Every gift has a price. You chose to ignore it. Now the price collects itself. The hunter revealed Ethan's fear grew. He realized Karak wasn't a servant at all. He was something worse, something patient, something waiting. Late one night, Ethan woke to find Karak standing by the window, watching the city below. His armor glowed faint red, and in his reflection, Ethan swore he saw something monstrous. Not human, not servant. Predator. When Ethan whispered, "Who are you really?" Karak did not turn around. He only said, "I am what you summoned, and when the time comes, I will collect what is mine." Ethan's blood ran cold. He had power, yes, but he also had a death sentence chained to his soul. Ethan looked at the piles of money, the respect from strangers, the sudden fear in his enemy's eyes. He had everything he once wanted, but every time he saw Karak's glowing eyes, one thought burned in his mind. What if all of this is just a game? A game I was never meant to win? The hidden truth: Ethan had grown addicted to power. With Karak by his side, nothing seemed impossible. Money flowed into his hands. Enemies vanished. Respect followed him wherever he went. But beneath the surface, fear kept growing. The pain in his chest was sharper now, lasting longer each time Karak used his abilities. One evening, Ethan sat at his desk, piles of cash scattered across the table. He should have felt happy, but instead sweat rolled down his face. His hands trembled as he stared at the glowing symbols on his laptop screen. The contract had returned again. The alien letters shifted and twisted like living snakes, glowing faint blue in the darkness. Ethan leaned closer, his heart pounding. "What are you hiding from me?" he whispered. For the first time, the letters began to change. Slowly, painfully, they rearranged themselves into human words. His eyes widened as the sentence formed. At the end of the service, the servant takes the master's soul. Ethan's stomach dropped. His blood turned to ice. He pushed the laptop away, his chair crashing to the floor. No. No. This can't be real. Karak, standing silently in the corner, stepped forward. His voice was calm but heavy with finality. Now you see the truth. Ethan's chest heaved. You knew this? You knew from the start. Karak's golden eyes glowed brighter. It is not my duty to explain the law of the pact. You signed without care, and now the cost will come. Ethan shook his head violently. No, there has to be a way out. There has to be something I can do. Karak's voice was like a closing door. There is no escape. 7 cycles, 7 days. When the final night arrives, your soul will be mine. The words cut deeper than any blade. Ethan staggered back, clutching the table for balance. 7 days? That's all I have? Yes, Karak answered without hesitation. Desperation. The next morning, Ethan tried to fight the truth. He tore the laptop apart, smashing it into pieces, but when he turned away, the screen appeared whole again, glowing with the same words. He ripped the contract file from the hard drive, deleted it, burned paper copies he had printed, but the glowing text appeared on the walls, the ceiling, even on his skin when he looked too long in the mirror. There was no escape. The contract was not a file. It was carved into reality itself. Ethan stopped going to work. He stopped answering calls. He locked himself inside, pacing back and forth, his mind drowning in fear. Karak never moved far. He followed Ethan's every step, his golden eyes glowing with patience as if counting down the days. The bargain attempt on the 3rd night, Ethan snapped. He turned to Karak, anger replacing fear. There has to be a way. You serve me, right? Then I command you, break the contract. For the first time, Karak laughed. It was not a human laugh. It was deep, metallic, a sound that shook the walls. You cannot command what is absolute. You are not my master in this. You are my meal. Ethan's face went pale. His heart hammered. But Karak was not done. Still, you may try. Bargains exist in every world. But bargains require sacrifice. Ethan licked his dry lips. What kind of sacrifice? Karak's eyes burned brighter. Another soul. Trade one life for your own. The room fell silent. Ethan's mind raced. Could he really sacrifice someone else? Could he live knowing he had condemned another? The thought gnawed at him. For a moment he hated himself for even considering it, but fear is a strong poison, and death was closing in. Signs of the end. By the 5th day, Ethan's body grew weaker. His skin turned pale. The pain in his chest never fully left him. Even simple movements made his breath heavy. At night, shadows whispered in the corners of his room. He began to hear voices when Karak was silent. Low alien chants repeating the same words. The master pays. The master pays. The world outside seemed to shift too. Strangers glanced at him like they already knew. The city felt colder. Even the sun seemed weaker, as if the universe itself was preparing for his end. The question of trust. That night, Ethan collapsed onto his bed, trembling. He stared at Karak. Why me? Why would the universe want me dead? I'm no one. I was just desperate. Karak stood still, silent for a long time. Finally he answered, because desperation is the easiest trap. The hungry always eat fastest, and the foolish are always first to fall. Ethan closed his eyes, fighting tears. So that's it. I'm doomed. But then Karak's tone shifted. Not doomed, tested. Ethan frowned, confused. Tested for what? Karak did not answer. His eyes dimmed slightly, as if hiding a secret. The clock ticks on. The 6th night, Ethan dreamed of fire and chains. He saw himself dragged into a void where thousands of glowing eyes waited. He heard Karak's voice deeper than ever, whispering, 7 days, 1 chance, choose. He woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding. The contract burned on his wall again, the words brighter than before. Time ends soon. Ethan realized the truth. Karak was not simply waiting. He was preparing. The final night was close, and nothing Ethan had done mattered. Unless there was something hidden in the word Karak had spoken. Tested. Ethan stared at the alien warrior, his fear twisting into fragile hope. Maybe there was more to this than doom. Maybe there was a secret path. Maybe, just maybe, Karak was not only his executioner but also the key to survival. But what kind of test required his soul as the prize? Escape attempts. The 7th day was approaching. Every tick of the clock sounded like a countdown to Ethan's death. The glowing contract words followed him everywhere. On walls, on mirrors, even flashing in the corner of his vision like a curse he could not blink away. Karak remained the same. Tall, silent, unshaken. His golden eyes glowed with patience, as if he were simply waiting for a meal that could not escape. But Ethan refused to surrender. Not yet. Not without a fight. First attempt. Fire. Ethan's first plan was simple: destroy the contract itself. He printed every copy the computer generated, filled a pile in the bathtub, and poured gasoline over it. The smell burned his throat. With trembling hands, he struck a match and tossed it in. Flames roared, devouring the pages. Ethan coughed through the smoke, his heart racing with hope. Burn to ash. But when the flames died, the pages were still there, untouched. Not a single mark of fire on them. Instead, the letters glowed brighter, mocking him. Behind him, Karak's voice rumbled like thunder. You cannot burn what is carved into the universe. Ethan collapsed against the wall, clutching his head. Why won't it work? Why won't anything work? Karak simply answered, because it is not meant to. Second attempt. Running, that night Ethan grabbed a bag of money stuffed in clothes and ran. He left the apartment, sprinting down the street, ignoring the stares of strangers. His lungs burned, his chest ached, but he didn't stop. He took a bus, then a train, then another bus, heading miles away from the city. At last he found himself in a distant town, quiet, small, forgotten. He booked a cheap motel and locked the door. For the first time in days, he felt a spark of relief. But when he turned around, Karak was already there. The alien stood in the corner of the motel room, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. He had not followed Ethan. He had simply appeared, as if space itself bent to his will. Ethan fell to his knees, gasping. No. This isn't fair. Karak's calm voice filled the small room. You cannot run from your own shadow. I am bound to you wherever you go. Ethan wept into his hands. The room felt smaller, colder, like a coffin waiting to close. Third attempt, chains on the 5th night. Ethan tried something desperate. He had read about rituals and containment spells online, strange writings in dark corners of the internet. If Karak was bound by a contract, maybe he could be trapped. He drew symbols on the floor in chalk, circles within circles, each one copied from old forbidden books. In the center, he placed chains soaked in salt water and wrapped with iron locks. "Step inside," Ethan ordered, his voice breaking. Karak obeyed, stepping into the circle. For a moment, Ethan's hope grew. He snapped the chains closed around Karak's limbs. The alien stood motionless, bound in metal and salt. Ethan exhaled in relief. It worked. It actually worked, but then Karak moved. Slowly, easily, he broke the chains like threads. The chalk circle burned away in a flash of light. Karak's voice shook the apartment. "Do not insult me with toys." Ethan stumbled back in terror, his hope shattering like glass. Fourth attempt. Begging by the sixth day, Ethan was a shell of himself. Pale skin, sunken eyes, trembling hands. Every breath felt heavy, every heartbeat painful. He dropped to his knees before Karak. "Please, please don't take me. I'll give you anything. I'll serve you instead. I'll be your slave. Just let me live." Karak looked down at him, expressionless. "You misunderstand," he said. "You already served me. Your soul is the final payment. You have nothing else to offer." Ethan sobbed, clutching at Karak's armored legs. But Karak stood firm, silent as a statue carved from iron. A twist of desperation. That night, Ethan remembered Karak's words from before. "Another soul. Trade one life for your own." The thought returned, dark and poisonous. He could live if someone else died in his place. Ethan stared at his phone, scrolling through names. Old enemies, bullies, people who had hurt him. People he thought deserved it. But as he looked at each name, his hands shook. Could he really condemn another? Could he really offer a soul to save his own? He threw the phone against the wall, screaming, I can't do it." In the corner, Karak's golden eyes glowed brighter, watching, waiting, silent. The countdown on the seventh night, Ethan felt death in the air. The pain in his chest was constant now, sharp with every breath. He could hear whispers all around him, the same chant over and over. The master pays. The master pays. The glowing contract covered every surface of his apartment. The words burned like fire. His name repeated again and again, branded into the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Ethan clutched his head, tears streaming down his face. "No more, please, no more." Karak stepped forward, towering above him. His voice was final, unshaken. "The time has come." Ethan looked up at him, broken, desperate, terrified. Then why wait? Why torture me for 7 days? Why not take me on the first night? Karak's eyes burned with a strange light. For the first time, his voice carried something different. Not cruelty, not hunger. Something like judgment. Because this is the test. The contract was never about wealth or power. It was about you. About whether you would surrender, run, or fight until the last breath. Ethan's blood ran cold. His fear deepened. A test for what? But Karak gave no answer. He only reached out his hand. Ethan realized the truth. He had tried fire, chains, running, begging. Nothing worked. He had failed to escape, and now, on the final night, the real judgment was about to begin. The final confrontation. The seventh night arrived. The city outside was quiet, but inside Ethan's apartment the air felt heavy, thick like the walls themselves were closing in. Every surface burned with the words of the contract, glowing like molten iron. The whispers grew louder. The master pays. The master pays. Ethan's body was weak, his skin pale, his eyes sunken. But his spirit was not broken, not yet. Fear still lived in his chest, but beside it burned a spark of something else. Defiance. Karak stood at the center of the room, tall and unshaken. His armor glowed red like cooling lava, his golden eyes locked on Ethan with cold patience. "It is time," Karak said, his voice echoing like a drumbeat in a cave. Ethan staggered to his feet. His legs shook, but he forced himself to stand tall. "If you want my soul, you'll have to fight me for it." Karak tilted his head, almost amused. "You think you can resist me?" Ethan clenched his fists. "I don't care if I lose. I won't go down on my knees. Not to you. Not to anyone." The trap Ethan had spent the last hours preparing. He had broken apart his laptop, rewired old machines, stolen generators, and pieced together something crude, dangerous, a containment field. It was shaky, unstable, but it was all he had. He lured Karak into the center of the room, then slammed his hand on a switch. Sparks erupted. A circle of glowing electricity surged up around Karak, forming a cage of energy. The floor shook as the machine roared to life. Karak's body stiffened. His armor vibrated under the pressure. For the first time, he looked less like a god and more like something trapped. Ethan's heart raced. It worked. You're not invincible after all. But Karak's golden eyes narrowed. You think this prison can hold me? You insult me, human. The Trapathan had spent the last hours preparing. He had broken apart his laptop, rewired old machines, stolen generators, and pieced together something crude, dangerous, a containment field. It was shaky, unstable, but it was all he had. He lured Karak into the center of the room, then slammed his hand on a switch. Sparks erupted. A circle of glowing electricity surged up around Karak, forming a cage of energy. The floor shook as the machine roared to life. Karak's body stiffened. His armor vibrated under the pressure. For the first time, he looked less like a god and more like something trapped. Ethan's heart raced. It worked. You're not invincible after all. But Karak's golden eyes narrowed. You think this prison can hold me? You insult me, human. Breaking the cage, Karak raised his arm. The cage shook violently. Energy crackled as the alien's power collided with the field. The walls of light bent, twisted, threatened to shatter. Ethan screamed, forcing the generator higher. The machine screamed back, sparks flying, wires burning. Sweat poured down his face as he pushed it past its limit. For a moment, just a moment, Karak faltered. His massive frame trembled. His armor dimmed. Ethan saw his chance. He grabbed a steel pipe, charged, and swung it at Karak's helmet. The sound rang like a church bell. Sparks flew. Karak staggered a step back, but then Karak laughed. The sound was deep, terrifying, and final. You have courage. But courage cannot change destiny. With a roar, Karak unleashed a wave of energy. The cage shattered like glass. The generator exploded, throwing Ethan across the room. Ethan's last stand. Ethan hit the wall hard. Pain seared through his body, but he forced himself up, coughing blood. His vision blurred, but his will sharpened. He picked up the broken steel pipe again, holding it like a sword. His arms shook, but he pointed it at Karak. I don't care what you are. I don't care what the contract says. I won't let you take me without a fight. Karak stepped closer, his towering frame casting a shadow that swallowed the room. His voice rumbled with something almost like respect. Few resist until the end. Most beg, most surrender. But you fight. Ethan spat blood on the floor. Then come and finish it. The clash. Karak struck first. His armored fist smashed into the ground where Ethan had stood a second earlier, cracking the floor like an earthquake. Ethan rolled aside, swinging the pipe with desperate strength. It clanged uselessly against Karak's armor, but he didn't stop. Blow after blow, Ethan swung, screamed, fought. He was nothing compared to the alien warrior, but he refused to give in. Karak knocked the pipe from his hands, grabbed Ethan by the throat, and lifted him into the air. Ethan clawed at the grip, gasping for breath. The golden eyes burned into his soul. It is over. Ethan's vision darkened. His body was failing, but in his final breath he spat the words, I will. Never, kneel. The unexpected turn. Karak froze. For the first time, his grip loosened. His eyes dimmed, then glowed brighter than ever. Slowly, he lowered Ethan back to the ground. Ethan collapsed, coughing, barely alive. He looked up, confused. Why did you stop? Karak's voice changed. No longer cold, no longer hungry. It was deeper, calmer, almost reverent. Because the test is complete. Ethan blinked through the haze. Test? Karak nodded. The contract was never about power, never about wealth. It was about your will. Would you surrender? Would you betray? Or would you fight, even against death itself? Ethan's heart pounded. He could barely whisper. And did I pass? Karak dropped to one knee, lowering his head. You resisted until the last breath. You passed. The breaking of the contract, the glowing letters that covered the walls began to burn away, fading into smoke. The whispers stopped. The heavy air lifted. Ethan looked around, stunned. It's gone? Karak rose to his full height again, his golden eyes shining with something new. Respect. The contract is broken. I am no longer your executioner. Now I am your ally. Ethan stared at him, trembling, half in relief, half in disbelief. Ally, you mean? You're staying? Karok's armor glowed faintly. Yes, by choice, not by law. You are no longer my master by contract. You are my master by will. Ethan's chest filled with conflicting emotions, fear, hope, and something even stronger. Power was still his, but at what cost? The final night had ended not with death, but with a bond forged in fire. Ethan had survived, but deep inside he wondered if this was only a test. Then what was the real game waiting behind it? The twist ending, the contract was gone. The glowing words had faded from the walls. The whispers had died. For the first time in 7 nights, silence filled Ethan's apartment. He lay on the floor, exhausted, every breath sharp with pain. Yet he was alive. Against all odds, he had survived the test. Karok stood tall above him, no longer bound by glowing chains of law, but by something far stranger: choice. His golden eyes no longer burned with hunger. Instead, they shone with something deeper: respect, maybe even loyalty. You fought until the end, Karok said, his voice steady. You proved yourself. I'm yours not because of a contract, but because you earned it. Ethan's throat was dry. His body trembled. So, it's over? You're not going to take my soul? Karok shook his head slowly. No, that fate was for the weak. You resisted. You endure. And now you are not prey. You are partner. Ethan let out a broken laugh, half relief, half disbelief. He had beaten the impossible. He had stared death in the eye and lived, but deep inside a question gnawed at him. Why him? Why this? Why test a desperate nobody from Earth? A new bond. The days that followed were strange. Life returned, but nothing felt the same. Karok did not leave. He followed Ethan everywhere, not like a servant anymore, but like a shadow bound by respect. Strangers stared in awe, some in fear, some whispering rumors about the tall, armored figure that never left Ethan's side. Ethan used Karok's presence carefully. No more reckless commands, no more greedy wishes. He had learned the cost of shortcuts. Still, just knowing Karok was there made him feel invincible. Yet every night when Ethan lay in bed, doubt whispered in his mind. The test had ended. The contract had burned away. But if that was true, why did Karok remain? The cracks of truth one night, unable to sleep, Ethan asked the question that haunted him. Karok, he whispered. Why me?
Why Earth?
Why this contract in the first place? Karok stood silent for a long moment, his golden eyes staring out the window at the endless sky. Finally, his voice came low and heavy. You think you were the first? You were not, Ethan froze. What do you mean? Karok turned to him. There have been others. Across worlds. Across ages. The contract is older than your son. Some sign, most fail. Few endure. Ethan's stomach tightened. And what happens to the ones who fail? Karok's eyes burned brighter. They become fuel. Their souls strengthen the chain. Their failure feeds the test for the next fool. Ethan's skin crawled. He realized how close he had come to joining them. The hidden war Karok stepped closer, lowering his voice. This was not just about you. This was about finding those strong enough to resist. A war is coming, Ethan, not here, not yet, but across the stars. My kind, we do not serve masters. We seek warriors. You survived because you were meant to. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. So all of this, my suffering, the contract, everything, it was recruitment. Karok nodded once. Yes, you passed where billions have failed. Now you belong to something greater. Ethan's relief turned to dread. He had escaped death but walked into something far more dangerous. The vision before Ethan could speak again, Karok raised his armored hand. His golden eyes flared and the room vanished. Ethan gasped as visions exploded in his mind. Galaxies burning, fleets of alien warships clashing in the void, monstrous beings of fire and shadow consuming entire planets, and in the center of it all he saw them, humans. Not many, just a handful, standing with alien warriors at their side holding weapons of impossible design. He saw himself among them. The vision ended, and Ethan stumbled back, shaking. What was that? Karok's voice rumbled like thunder. The future. The war that comes. You are chosen now. And choice is not escape, it is burden. The final doubt. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, hands trembling. His mind screamed for peace, for a normal life, but his heart pounded with something else, fear mixed with destiny. I never asked for this, he whispered. Karok placed a massive hand on his shoulder, the weight heavy, but steady. No one ever does. But the universe does not ask. It chooses. Ethan closed his eyes. He had beaten the contract, but not the game. The real battle was only beginning. The twist outside, the night sky shimmered with stars. Ethan stared through the window, trying to calm his racing mind. But then he saw it. One star flickered strangely, glowing red, pulsing like a heartbeat. Karak's eyes snapped to the sky. His voice dropped to a whisper. They know. Ethan turned to him. Who knows? Karak's armor flared with light. The ones who write the contracts, the ones who sent me, they know you survived, and they are coming. Ethan's blood ran cold. The contract was gone, but his soul was still marked. He was no longer a victim. He was a player in a game far bigger than Earth. The silence of the room grew heavier. Ethan realized the truth. He had won the battle. But the war had just begun.